Maggie Barry.
I move that the question be now put.
Sue Moroney.
Chair, thank you so much for the opportunity to take a call on Part 1 of the Taxation, Annual Rates, Foreign Superannuation and Remedial Matters Bill. And of course, Part 1 actually deals with the annual rates part, which is really what most New Zealanders come into contact with when they come into contact with our taxation system. So it is around a lost opportunity in Part 1. Because there was an opportunity for the government, and goodness knows they've had a long enough time, because they've had this bill on the order paper for such a long time that they've had to bring amendments forward to actually change the start date of this bill backwards, because it's been languishing on the order paper for so long. So the first thing that we'd have to ask is, why is that? Why has this bill been so badly mismanaged that they have now had it in front of Parliament for so long that the start dates have to be amended? But why is it also that the government is so stuck in its old ways, the same old mantra that our National Party always does, that it hasn't taken the opportunity to recognise the opportunity that this bill presents to actually have a fairer tax system than what we currently have? Because this Part 1 of this bill continues the problem that we have with every single national government I've seen in the course of my lifetime, and I imagine most people listening to this debate have also seen in the course of their lifetime. There is, well, David Bennett says change the record. That's exactly what I'm saying to the government. I'm saying to the government, change the record, because here's the record of the National Party. The National Party always cuts taxes for those at the top who don't need it. And then they go about cutting public services because they cry poor mouth about not having enough money to fund public services properly, and then they flog off state assets. And it's the same old formula that this government has followed, that every other national government has ever followed. And it starts off with what they're continuing in Part 1 of this bill, and that is the old tax switch, as they call it, the old switcheroo of the taxation, which the rest of us would call the tax swindle. And that is that despite promising he wouldn't raise GST, John Key, in one of his first, or not his first, one of probably at his instruction Bill English's first budgets, did exactly that. Despite promising he wouldn't do it, he raised GST from 2.5% to 15%. Remember when GST used to be 10%?
This is the income tax bill. It's not got a lot about GST. Now, I appreciate the member can talk about GST.
Sure.
But you have to make it relevant to Part 1.
Sure.
Or Schedule 1. Okay?
Thank you, Mr Chair. And so the reason why this debate is actually is relevant to Part 1 is not only did Mr Goldsmith raise it as the chairperson of the committee in his Part 1 debate about GST, but also because it's the entire package around what the whole way in which the national government has shaped up its taxation. Well, Mr Bennett says it's waffle. It's not waffle to those people for whom every single item they bought went up overnight, because his leader broke a promise to the electorate. And that's what happened. So where people were paying 12.5% on GST, they suddenly found themselves paying 15%, and everyone's living costs went up overnight. Did their wages go up to compensate? No. But what did happen, and this is where Part 1 continues to make this mistake, is what did happen is that the people at the top end of the income scale got huge tax cuts, huge walloping tax cuts. And we believe, and he's never denied it, we believe that the tax cut that the Prime Minister himself got was in the order of $1,000 a week. That wasn't what he paid, that's what he stopped paying. Every week, $1,000 in the back pocket of the Prime Minister, and everyone else's GST went up to pay for it. That, Mr Chair, was the tax swindle and not the tax switch. And that's what Part 1 continues to keep in place. It keeps in place the taxation regime that saw those at the very top end of income, in the middle of a recession for goodness sake, get an absolute absolute huge benefit. And what we know about people at the top end of the tax scale is that they don't spend every cent that they earn. Every week they get to save quite a lot of money because they earn more than what it costs most people, Mr Chair. Mr Chair?
David Bennett.
I move that the question be now put.
Come on. Mr Chair.
I'll give Andrew Little a go at debating the topic.
Thank you, Mr.